Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Carrie Linklater. I'm your chairperson today. On my far left, we're joined by Sandy Tapper, and my immediate left, Ray Mazacote. Our assessor today is Jeremy Pohl, and our secretary is Cassie Hawes. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We will limit discussion to those matters. Statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record.
Please state your full name.
Jeremy Ryan Pohl.
And do you swear that the evidence you'll present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth
I
to
do.
help you God? Thank you. Please state your full name.
Henry DuPont.
And do you swear that the evidence you'll present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
And whenever you're ready, Mr. Pohl, and would you please read out the business assessment ID number? Thank you.
Business assessment ID number or business roll number is 20217. I have a recommendation. It reads on the brief as 27,890. I'd like to correct that to 27,900. That's just based on the rounding issues that we need. I rounded it off incorrectly. That's based on a review of the property and agreement that we had by 15-1. Are you accepting that?
I agree. Or I accept.
So you're accepting the 27,900?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Pohl, you said you had reviewed the property and this is what it was based on?
Yeah, there was a revision of agreement. You guys won't see it. It's a 15-1 where we reviewed it internally, made the reduction, and this reduction is based on that work.
Thank you. And whenever you're ready, the next one.
Unit 205 Donald. My recommendation is to maintain the assessment at 91,800. If you look at my following page, we had a border revision on this one, where the border reduced the value from 12,784,000 down to 11,089,000, based on the applicant's evidence. The applicant's evidence, as you turn through the pages, are as attached. We used an overall rental rate of around $12.35 a square foot. On page 6, this is an excerpt from the realty brief for the 2018 appeal. You can see unit 200 is number 5 Donald Business. That's in at $9 for their workup. Their overall workup is for $11.21, I guess averaged. This property, or this unit, is owner occupied. That's a book rent, that's not a hard length rent. If you look at the other rents that are in here at 15, 12, 14, 13, 10, 50, 13, if you take the rents that are closer to the reference date, meaning not the older leases, the 1235 is more than achievable in the property based on the subject property's actual rents. So if we turn to the following page, here's the actual rent roll. I'll let you guys go through it in full if you want, but I'll just highlight some of the rents. Scarrow and Donald is a long-term rent. They've been in there forever. They're in at $11. Associated Engineering, we signed in 2013 at $14.50. We have Fraser, they're renewed at $12.50. Pine Portage Bay Management, they reviewed at $12.25. And you have the Winnipeg Regional Health Property at 9,000 square feet, they renewed at $12. So for property, or for units within the building that are similar sized, they're pushing that $12 plus rent and above it. The subject property is showing that. And if there's any contention, whether that's an owner occupied property, or I should say unit, unit 200, if you look, number 5 Donald Business is actually what the property's name, number 5 Donald. And I believe I put company searches in where after I searched, it's Shelter Canadian Properties, which is has Arnie Thornton. So it's clearly an owner occupied portion of the building. So the $9 rent that's been reported should not be used. So my recommendation is to use the achieved rents within the building, and $12.25, or $12.35 I should say, is reasonable. Sorry, we have it our $12.27, I apologize. For the realty, it was about $12.35. So basically the same assessment rate, or rental rate, I should say. With our occupancy cost, that produces $91,800, and I think it should be maintained.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Mr. Devine?
Yes, the rent roll, you show 3,200, number 5 Donald Business Center.
Yeah.
And then you have a corporation's filing. And do you have a second corporation filing, the last page?
Yeah.
A number company, or what is that about?
That's the registered owner of the property, of the realty property. Number 5 Business is the tenant. And as you can see, Shelter Canadian Properties is the same as the director of the owner of the property. They're commonly known as one and the same. So Arnie's involved with Shelter Canadian Properties.
So the last page, shareholders information, it says holders of 10% or more, Shelter Canadian, and how come you don't have the shareholder information for the previous page?
This is all that there was for there's just 2 pages. So I brought in what was there. This is all the search showed up. What I'm saying is, through my dealings with these Canadian shelters, they're one and the same. It's commonly known.
But it says the place of business is the address of Shelter. It doesn't say that Shelter owns anything.
Are you saying Arnie Thornton is not involved with and completely arm's length from Shelter Canadian Properties?
I'm not saying anything, it's your evidence, and I'm questioning your evidence. With this, are you proving that Shelter has any ownership, or is that where the mailing goes?
I'm telling you that those 2 entities are one and the same, they're intermingled.
Is it possible that Shelter owns 10% and then the rest are partners?
I can't tell you the breakup. This is all what the search shown. The search is shown in full. So.
But it's not a Shelter office there, it's a business center, so therefore Shelter would not be in there. Would you agree with that?
If that's how they're running it, yeah, I mean, All I'm showing is the commonality between number 5 Donald Business Center and the registered property owner. Registered property owner, which is 3757715 Manitoba Inc. His director is Thornton, Arnie Thornton, and he's directly involved with this agency. Like, I mean,
So the last page, you have director Arnie Torstensen, but the previous page, you don't have any directors.
no, this is all that showed up on the search. I'm telling you from doing the realty from numerous years, these are one and the same. It's common knowledge.
No, I'm saying that your search has different criteria for the owner of the building than for the owner of the business. You don't show any shareholders, you don't show any directors. It could be other directors that are not associated with shelter. We don't know that from your evidence.
Are you saying that this $9 rent in your eyes is not a book rent? Or is it completely arm's length rent?
I don't know. I'm just saying that you did not prove.
Did you have any, that's all your questions? Thank you. Sandy?
I have no questions.
Rick?
No verses.
I have no questions. If you'd like to proceed with your evidence?
5?
Yes,
5, yeah. So the first page indicates what I'm asking for. So the square footage 6285 is an error. They have the occupancy cost of 6240, so it should be 6240 for the rent as well. And the assessor charged all the occupancy costs, which is $235 per square foot. The board of revision agreed to a ultimate value of $9 rent, so therefore at the bottom, we're asking the proper square footage times $9 plus $235 occupancy, $1135, for an assessment, $70,824. The next page is the decision of the board of revision. They agreed with a value of $11,089. Next page is based on the evidence presented by the applicant. Then the front page of our report, and then there's the photo. We were asking for 11089, that the board agreed with. Page 6 was the rent roll that we presented, not the owner's rent roll, but our income approach. And the third tenant, 200 number 5 Donald Business Center, we put it in at 6240 at $9 per square foot. And the board agreed with that. The next page is a summary showing the 11089. And the last page is the rent roll, which Jeremy showed, shows that the rent roll shows they're paying $9 rent on 6240. Now, at the hearing, if you see the second page, was Doug Becker of Altus. So I don't know what Doug testified at the hearing. For whatever it was, the board agreed to the $9 rent that Altus had presented. So therefore, we're asking you to follow the realty decision. I would say that this board should rely on the board revision decisions in most cases, and they should not deviate from that unless there's compelling new evidence. And without compelling new evidence, I believe we should go with the board revision has decided in the past. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Did you investigate, first of all, you're effectively the owner through agency representing here today, right? You're an agent of the owner, you're effectively the
Yeah.
owner sitting here today.
Of the Senate.
So, do you know if this is an owner occupied space?
No, I did not check into that. I just showed the previous board decision, and
Right.
I thought it was a simple matter.
Okay, yeah. And we have on the INE, it's checked, so it should say for number 5, Donald Business Center, It's checked, it's not checked off as owner occupied, it's indicated no.
Right, number 5 is used for all the other tenants, or majority of the other tenants.
But after reviewing the two company searches, would you not agree that there is commonality between the business that's occupying that space and the ownership group of the property? And not just that, but the actual name of the business is kind of indicating. It's pretty hard for a number 5 Donald Business Center, and your property, your building is referred to as number 5 Donald.
But yeah, the name number 5 refers to the address of the building, doesn't refer to who owns the business.
Right,
Not the
but
name of the-
typically you wouldn't move in and name your business the name of the building. You have your own business name, you wouldn't inherit the name of the building.
No, it's easy to identify, it's a business center at 5 Donald. It does not indicate the ownership of the business.
But you're
I think it's
disagreeing with
highly
it,
possible that Shelter does not own 100% of that business center.
even if it didn't own 100% of it, it would still not be an arm's length, right?
No, then it becomes, I guess, partly arm's length, because the other owners, if they're 50%, they don't want to pay a higher rent than they want. So therefore, they would likely be, the ones determining the rent, Shelter would have to say, well, we're both the owner and landlord for 50%, we'll let you decide on the other side.
And
So-
last question would be, if you look at the rent roll, especially the property, or the tenants that are in around 2015, they're all achieving at or close to the rent that we're putting them in at.
This is one of the larger space,
Yeah.
62. So the large tenants, the 17894 is $11, 12,000 is 1050, and 10224 is $11. So it's
And we
still a
have
lot
associated
lower.
engineer at 4,200 square, 3,600 square feet at 1450. We have 1250 at Fraser. We have Winnipeg Regional Health at 12. So if you take the average weight, you're in around just a little over $12.
Fraser is 1870 square feet, and I'm saying the larger square footages are not paying 1235. The less than that. they're
You have
more.
Winnipeg Regional Health paying 12. You have 3,700 square feet paying 1275 at Pine Portage Bay. You have Associated Engineering half the size at, again, 3,651 square feet paying 1450. And you have a very old Scarrow and Donald rent, they've been in there for as far back as I can search, at $11, so that's an old time tenant.
Which one's an all-time tenant?
Scarrow and Donald, so it is a little under that, but they've been such a long-term tenant.
But their lease started in 2015, that's for the
I'm
rent.
telling you, they've been in there for quite some time.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter, it could be there for 20 years, but they renewed or signed a new lease in 2015.
But there's a number of step-ups that could be determined prior. Have you reviewed it to see if it was an actual reviewed at that market in 2015, or is this a 20-year lease with indicated step-ups? What I'm saying is, when you're new to the building, the newer tendencies to the building are pushing market at around the $12.50 or above rate. So to put it in at $9, it seems to stick out as it's a book rate.
Anyway, you cannot claim that the Sparrow and Donald is an old lease because it was renewed, the lease started in 2015. So therefore, the tax in front of you is a 2015 lease. It's not an old lease.
That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Sandy, do you have
I have no
questions? Mike?
Just want to clarify, are you saying that this is not an owner-occupied space? It's not an owner-occupied space, is that what you're saying?
I said, I don't know,
You don't know?
because I did not do the appeal. I'm saying he did not prove it, that it's not.
No, but you don't know what you're saying. You
I don't know myself. I did the appeals a few years back, and I seem to recall that Shelter did not own the whole thing,
Yeah.
but I can't testify to that.
Just for the board's backing, this was a condominium unit, each floor was a separate condo, and then they amalgamated everything into one. I think I had it back in 14 with Doug, when it was still all separate, and I can't remember the date where it went back all along, but I think that's how it sat at appeal for 2018.
Why is the rent lower than all the other rents? What do you think would justify that?
Well, first of all, it's different than all other tenants because it's a business center. So it's different, likely mean a whole bunch of little offices. It's not built like a regular office, because you have somebody that works in their own, and they go to a little office and they share a secretary and admin and filing room. So they share everything, so that, the way it's set up, it's not set up very well for rental to another tenant later on. You'd have to break down a whole bunch of walls, redesign the whole thing.
So that would cause for the owner to charge lower rent because of that, that's what you're saying?
I'm saying it's totally different than the rest.
Well, different doesn't mean lower. Because something is different doesn't mean you get a lower rent.
Oh, I realize that, but I mean, I can distinguish this property, or this tenant from the rest, because it's a business center. And the paid actually $9, and the Board of Revision agreed to $9. And we don't have enough evidence now to change that.
All right, that's all my question. But you're also arguing about square footage, is that correct? You're saying it should be less than the...
Oh, yeah, it's a minor thing, but I mean.
It's 0.7% difference, it's nominal.
Okay.
Right, it's just that the rent roll shows 6240 square feet. The assessor's own cost to occupy is 6240.
Okay.
So we should change the rent to 45 square feet.
And just a summation, if I'm allowed.
Absolutely.
I went through both appeals for 2018. There was no indication that there was any search done on that unit for 200. Was indicated. If you're looking at it quickly going through, it does look like the rent roll showing that it is not owner occupied, but given the knowledge I have of the property and I did the searches, I am presenting new evidence. It does show that it is at least common interests, and that defines it as a non-arm's length rent, and it shouldn't be used. It's up to your decision if you want to put any weight on it.
Okay.
Corporations branch, my summation?
Yes.
Sorry. I've done many searches also for a corporations branch, and quite often they have the mailing address as a lawyer at a law firm. And that law firm does not own one share in the company, that's just a mailing address. For all notices go to a lawyer. So in this particular case, it could be 10 partners. And instead of sending to one of the partners, it said we'll send it to Shelter. So that's a mailing address for what Jeremy presented was the mailing address of the business center. It didn't show any of the ownership of the business center. They have burden proof, they did not prove anything. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next property, which is 28 Queen Elizabeth Way.
Business roll number is 2983. I'm gonna make a recommendation to reduce the assessment to $122,700, and that's based on the Board of Revision order, which is attached.
Excuse me, Mr. Cole, I'm sorry, you said 122,700?
122,700.
Thank you.
That's based on the recommendation that was made by the department after review during the realty cycle.
I agree with it.
There's no issues there. We're good.
Okay,
Well,
just,
yes.
I know. We can't all get along all the time. Well, we can't get along. We can't all agree all the time, but we can get along. Try to.
everybody's talking much faster than I can write.
That's okay. This hearing's gonna go pretty quick. We've got time.
And you're in acceptance of this?
I
Mr.
accept
Cole?
it.
Great, thank you.
Main Street, 28 Queen Elizabeth Way. I'm confused.
That probably was this place.
Yeah, 28 Main Street.
It was
This
really
Queen
changed, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, that little piece there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will just say to my fellow panel members on these recommendations, if you have questions, just feel free to jump in.
I see that these guys probably agreed to it.
Yes.
I try to be pretty thorough. I present the order, I present the workup, if you guys rule. And if there's any, like I said, if there's any differentiation that I disagree with, I'll make it clear.
Right. And the
51 Portage. Business roll number is 24961. I'm gonna be, recommendation is to reduce the 2018 assessment to, and I think I have put down 103,300, it should be 103,320. That's the value that I'll be recommending, and that's based on, again, the realty decision. Just a bit of rounding there. And that was, again, if you turn over, based on the applicant's net operating income, and that's what we're using for the rent, and applying the appropriate occupancy costs.
And Mr. Dumont, you're agreeing to this?
No, I don't.
Nope.
The assessment had an error originally. They had, for one of the first tenants, they had 2448 square feet, but they had 3,200 for air conditioning. So did you add up the total occupancy cost that you had before? Or did you spot that error?
Bear with me, hold on a second. You are correct, we need to reduce the occupancy costs by, give me 1 second. I talked with you on the phone, you couldn't point this out on the phone?
Oh, I told you my files were in my car, I didn't know.
Sorry, I missed this one, I apologize, yeah, give me a second here. I gotta reduce, so we're taking 752 square feet of air conditioning off, at 32 cents a square foot. So we're gonna reduce it $240. Just give me a second here. So that number changes to $100,380. That about right, Henry?
Now, I noticed something else, your third page, you have the 2016 board revision valuation by office. So would you agree that you maybe mixed up the years?
I do. I apologize. I think I printed out and attached the wrong one, and probably the 18 sitting on my desk. Wait, hold on a second. Yeah, I got the wrong one, but I got the right board. So it's based on the net operating income. If you look at the second page, that is correct for the 2018 realty. I'm not gonna say this, maybe, no, I will say. I do notice sometimes you guys put the 16, you haven't changed are you sure you didn't change the heading for the 2018 brief?
I caught that every now and again.
I took a copy of my.
Can I see yours if you got one?
Yeah.
That way I can just check the numbers.
I can pass that on. And so our last.
So you guys asked for a lesser rent than you did in 2016?
It appears so, yes. Right, and our heading shows 2018 Board of Division.
I catch that, but the market hasn't gone down for rent.
The Board of Division agreed with us, and it's owner occupied, so therefore it's not a matter of market, it's a matter of evidence that you present at each hearing.
Well, you're asking for, a reduction of rent for approximately 17% from what you guys asked for in 16 to 18. Can I get 5 minutes to look at this?
Absolutely.
Thanks, sorry.
You can pay.
I just reworked the numbers.
Is that going to be your recommendation?
Yeah, we'll take the appellants, what they're asking for. Can you just confirm what you're asking for again?
Yes, we're asking for 90,856. It's rounded 90,900.
90,800?
Yeah.
9,900.
90,000, sorry.
9,900.
90900. Is that right?
90,900.
Right,
Yeah.
Just rounding up to 856.
Oh, okay, I'm just making sure. Yep. Okay, we're good on that one.
Sorry, can I just have a couple of questions on this? Which portion of this building are you removing the air conditioning?
If you look at the first one,
Yeah.
bid 2337.7.
Add circle, sorry.
The last one where it says air conditioning, the area is 3,200. The
Yep.
area
On
is,
your bid.
the total area is 2448.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
And on to our next one.
okay, 599 Empress. Bid, business assessment number is 33,542. My recommendation is to reduce the assessment to $1,999,860. And that's based on the decision, which is on the following page, and that's based on the recommendation of the assessor at the realty hearing. So they recommended 1175, and that's what we're going.
And you're in agreement?
I accept it.
Okay, 200 Main Street. This is one that has a non-compliance issue. 200 Main Street, business assessment roll number is 32729. The owners are Wawanesa Mutual Insurance Group. My recommendation is to request the burden of proof to be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation for section 53(3)B in the Municipal Assessment Act, and if there's a reduction in assessment, that it follow section 54(3.2) of the Municipal Assessment Act. I will go through it quickly with you. On page 2 is the board order for the realty section, realty appeal. The burden of proof was reversed, and obviously along with that, the reduction followed the following year. They did give it a reduction. The whole building was appealed. It's an OFB with an underground parquet. We're just dealing with the underground parquet here for business assessment purposes. If we follow along, we turn to my page A3, is the 320 stall count at $138 net per month. Again, underground parking. That's what our model rate came in at, that's what we used. Page A4 is highlighted, or I should say checked. There's check marks on all 4 of the nearest heated parkades. Their NOIs are stabilized at 164, 118, 97, and 129. So $138 is more than achievable net. The following pages are just this mail, the original mailing, April 8th, sent to the property owner, and the certified mail sent out as well, and came back blank. On A14 are the signatures and where it was sent to, on A15 as well. But mainly getting to A16 is a string of emails that was the property owner asking for an extension. The extension was granted, but it was not, they didn't return the INEs. So they passed the deadline. They are non-compliant. They're fully aware they're non-compliant. They were asking about what penalties would occur. They're non-compliant. So, based on that, they're non-compliant. They missed their deadline. They asked for an extension, they got it, and then they didn't fulfill their commitment to the extensions. I can go into a longer argument, but I think it's fairly clear.
Thank you. Mr. Dupont?
Oh, I wasn't listening to you. So what do you say about the value?
First one of these, eh? No. The value I'll get to. We'll get to the value, but this is just the
Oh,
non-compliant.
okay, not quite, okay.
Here.
So you show some decisions of the board. Are any of those related to business assessment?
No, the realty would just be for the realty portion, but the non-compliance, they're owner occupiers. The owner of the property for realty didn't submit their INE, and the parkade is owner occupied. So that non-compliance issue would stretch to the business assessment as well.
So when you send out questionnaires, you send out questionnaires on the realty. You never send questionnaires for.
We did not ask there is no tenant to ask here. We sent it to the registered property owner of the realty property. They're to fill out the INEs. They asked for an extension. They didn't fulfill their commitment once it was granted. We used that INE to develop both our roles, our realty role and our business assessment role. In this case here, it's not a tenant we wouldn't penalize an arm's length tenant that had nothing to do with a failure to comply. In this case here is an owner occupier, so they're one and the same.
So what you're saying, so for business assessment purposes, you ask for non-compliance only on the portions of owner occupied, never for tenant occupied?
If it's an arm's length tenant, they didn't commit a failure to respond, but if it is the owner occupier that's occupying the property, they're the ones that failed. They're also the ones that would be getting a penalty for business assessment. We need that information to do both our roles.
Right, so are you not being inconsistent by penalizing owners only and not tenants?
Absolutely not. They're one and the same. That's the exact opposite. We're being very.
If your property is totally multi-tenant and the owner did not fill out questionnaires, you would not penalize any of those tenants that would appeal their
If
business assessment?
if this parkade is owner occupied, but if this property was, say, half the building itself, for the portions of business assessment of the owner occupied space, we would be asking for the non-compliance for them. If it would be spaces that are completely arm's length tenanted, we would not be asking for a non-compliance penalty for business assessment purposes because it wouldn't apply. They didn't commit the failure.
So one of the main tenants in this building is a Centerpoint Credit Union, is that correct?
Right.
So you occupy quite a bit. Now, they share the taxes, and therefore they would share the penalty on the taxes for the parkade, is that correct?
If you're asking, do they pay the taxes in totality? No, they pay a portion through contractual obligation, but not statutory obligation. The statutory obligation would be to the property owner. They're who we penalize.
So you're saying that the tenant may suffer?
That's a private matter between the tenant and the owner.
So this building is not wholly owner occupied? It has other tenants, Ivory Restaurant and the Centerpoint Credit Union, et cetera.
Yeah, there's a restaurant, but we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with an occupancy, an occupancy assessment and their associated tax on the parkade. The parkade's occupied and ran by Wawanesa.
Right, but they have tenants, and
Correct.
some of the tenants for those parking stalls are Ivory Restaurant, the Centerpoint Credit Union, whatever other tenants they have there.
Yeah, well, I would assume some of the tenancy, as far as the renting space of it, would be for the restaurant, I guess, and some for a Centerpoint Credit Union.
And
I'd like to point out, it's being ran by Wawanesa. The individual subtenant, it doesn't apply. They're the one running it. They're the ones who fail to reply. They're the ones who get the penalty for the business assessment tax. It's not like they're gonna go and say to the individual renter who may be a Assiniboine, we missed our business assessment notice, or we missed our I&E, so our business assessment taxes are not gonna go down on appeal, so we would like this much more money from you for, that doesn't associate, that's a private matter. If they have to raise the rate, they have to raise the rate, but that has nothing to do with did they fail, and are they running their own property? That's what they did. They get a non-compliance issue.
Would you agree that most properties like this, they would be charging the tenants their share of taxes on the realty as well as their share of the business tax?
Like I said, that's a private matter. This is, you're getting into an off-centered way of looking at it. We have a failure by an owner to submit their I&E. They then are owner occupied of that entire parkade. They run it for their employees and some other employees for their tenant. They park there as well, but they run the parkade. If their taxes are X amount, and if you're saying they're gonna have to raise rates next year, well, that's a completely separate issue from did they fail to report this rental information, or their I&E in whole in this case, and whether or not they're gonna raise their rates, that's a completely different scenario.
But in the case of Assiniboine's rent for realty purposes, Wawanesa manages
Yeah.
for them, so that you still say that if it was a business tax.
Well, I'm running off of no I&E
Assiniboine,
here.
how do you
I'm
do-
assuming Wawanesa runs the property. They look like they do. But as far as will they have to raise their rental rates in the future because of this appeal, that's a separate matter to whether they fail to comply and whether the rental rates will have to go up. I mean, you could say that on any property.
No, your position for the assessment department is that you never penalize the tenant on a business tax because it's the fault of the owner and you don't want to penalize the tenant. I'm saying in this case, it would penalize the tenants because the tenants are renting these stalls and
No,
they're paying the taxes back as recovery to the landlord. So your own particular policy says you don't want to penalize tenants, so it should apply to only fully owner-occupied property, should it not?
I just explained to you, that's a separate matter altogether. If you disagree with it, that's fine. But what I'm saying here, if you take it back to a floor-by-floor basis in the building, if your Assiniboine Credit Union filed a business assessment appeal for the rental space, we wouldn't be sitting here today saying, I'm asking for non-compliance on them. They're an arm's length tenant. They didn't fail. The property owner runs the parkade. Their statutory obligation is to pay the business assessment tax. Whether it's they try and recover some of it through their tenancy later on by raising rental rates, that's a separate matter, but that's completely irrelevant to whether they failed or not. Literacy, I mean, I can get into it in more detail. Is this?
No, you
Mr.
have no.
DuPont, sorry, do you have any further questions? Because we've sort of talked this one out, so.
Yeah, okay. No further questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Senator?
Want us to step out?
No, Mr.
I have to make a
DuPont has
submission.
to-
Oh, okay,
Yes.
sorry, yeah.
So I just wanted to.
My mistake, I'm getting ahead of myself.
I just want to clarify, Mr. Pohl, that this building is owned by Wawanesa.
Correct.
Okay,
And the parkade is ran and managed by
Wawanesa.
Wawanesa. And it's primarily for their, I guess they have three tenants, I guess they have the restaurant, but Wawanesa employees and then, Assiniboine Credit Union.
Right, okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. DuPont.
Redirect from that? There's 325 stalls. Is it your position that Wawanesa and Assiniboine or the tenants occupy all of those parking stalls, or they get a whole bunch of outsiders?
I can't tell you that, I don't have the I&E. I didn't fill that out. I attempted to contact the person who was responsible for submitting prior INEs and also the person who asked for the extension. Just give me 1 second here. I contacted Greg Starr, because when I'm looking at this property, the rental rate that was put in place by the board, and I had this property in past, was just so far off market, it didn't make any sense. He indicated that their gross average to the monthly parkers is $90, and that's independent of whether they're employees of Wawanesa or Assiniboine Credit Union. I asked him, quite frankly, I said that doesn't seem to play out in the marketplace because there's nowhere downtown that you can rent for $90 to stall underground. That's an unbelievable rate, quite frankly. And so I wanted to make it clear, and I asked him directly, is there a discount for Wawanesa employees? Are they free parking for Wawanesa employees? Is Assiniboine Credit Union paying full price for market? And then when you look at it as a whole, when you report the lump sum, then it would average out. He said no. He said they're paying approximately $90 gross a month, with the exception of a few stalls for the restaurant, which are dedicated stalls for the restaurant. But overall, that's what they pay for tenancies. And that's all the information I have to go on because that's all they had.
Did you ask to discuss whether they had outside tenants?
I just stated that's all the information he had. I
Yeah.
investigated the property as best as he could indicate.
Yeah, okay, so that's all the questions I have.
Okay, do you want to go on with your presentation? Do you have anything?
Yes,
Or-
okay, so I will agree with the facts that Wawanesa did not give a questionnaire. So I don't dispute that. I dispute the fact that whether it's applicable for business assessment. So that's my main argument. And the assessors did not give any precedence of non-compliance penalties on the VA from the municipal board, court, or the board of revision. It would be inconsistent for business assessment to charge penalties only on owner-occupied spaces. The majority of properties in commercial are not owner-occupied. In this particular case, and so it would be inconsistent, first of all, to only target a small portions of business assessments. In this particular case, the building is not fully owner-occupied. Parquet is not fully owner-occupied, so therefore the penalty should not be applicable because of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
No questions.
Sorry, Mr. Cole, do you have any questions?
I can give a summation statement. His position is different than mine.
If you wish to give a summation, go ahead.
They're statutory required to pay the taxes, the business tax. They're the entity that we are assessing. They're the entity that failed. They're one and the same for realty and business. This is the information we use to develop and certify our two roles. It affects both roles. They're owner-occupied, one and the same. It's completely applicable to put the non-compliance on the business assessment. I don't see any rationale not to. What you're arguing is you're going to be raising the rates later on, or whenever, based on this appeal, to the individual parkers, whether they be Wawanesa tenants or whether they be Wawanesa employees, or whether they be Assiniboine Credit Union employees, or I guess I don't know if it's free parking or to the people parking for the restaurant, but the restaurant must pay something for their stalls, whether it's in the lease or not. But that's a completely separate matter. There's no rationale to apply it, saying, well, they're not part of it. Well, we don't assess in their name. We're assessing in Wawanesa's name because they're running the parquet. They're statutory obligated to pay that tax. That's the person who's not compliant. Whether they have to raise the rates later on, that's a separate matter altogether.
Thank you.
Yeah, same argument as I said before. It's not fully owner-occupied, and either parquet or the realty VA, and the assessment policy is not to ask for penalty for tenants and therefore, because you would penalize a tenant for the actions of a landlord, and therefore, in this one, there are tenants that are paying for the parkade or paying the expenses, and therefore this would end up penalizing the tenants. It's not 100% owner occupied, and should not apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, if you could step out of the room. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. We're gonna uphold the non-compliance.
All right, I'll get to the nitty gritty of it. I'm gonna recommend that our model rate be applied. Our model.
Excuse me, yeah.
Oh, sorry,
He has
sorry.
to go first.
I apologize.
Just to,
I knew that. My first business assessment appeal this cycle, so I'm a little off.
I hear you.
Okay, I give you the reports or not?
No, I don't believe we have any.
so many of these, you just kind of get lost in the numbers sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm asking that the board use the decision of the board revision on the parkade, and the board accepted a net rent of $304,200 on 325 stalls, which is a net $78. And the $538, that was the rent that the assessor had for the realty. So we just, and there's no occupancy cost for that, it's simply the market rent. So we request $304,200. And then we go through the data for that. So the next page is the decision of the board revision. Page 2, the board went with 21,114,000, and you say decision is based on the applicant's evidence. The next page is the assessment, the original assessment, going $538,000 for the parkade rent or potential income. There's no expenses or vacancy, so that it's a net rent after expenses. Then the next page is the summary of the assessor's report for the realty. The assessor asked for the penalty, and then actually the penalty was granted, she saw. So then the assessor was asking, the realty was asking for 17 million, and then the next page, the assessor was asking for a net rent 538,000 with a 7.5 cap rate, 7,176,000 for the parkade. Then up to that is the first page of the Altus report, and we were asking for 21,114,000. The next page, page 6 of our report. So that's the page that had on the parking, so it's 325 parking stalls. The assessor had a net monthly rent 138 per stall, which is quite high. That's supposed to be a net. If you have a rent, I believe the rent downtown are 160 to 180, and if you take 45% expense from that, then you would have close to more like $100 a net. So this one is what the assessor had, I believe, was on the high side. The next paragraph is that the 2014 and 2015 monthly parking rate was $110 per stall gross. So they had the gross parking shown 2014, 2015, 220, 208. The parking expense do not include property tax. And it shows the 2015 parkade assessment was 4,387,000, so now it's 7,001,000, a big increase. So the 2015 market parkade expenses were shown there, 9,600, and the taxes. There's like the other expenses like utilities, etc. However, those are not separated on the parking statements, apparently, because they just use the maintenance and taxes as expense. So they have 3248 as expense. Then it says 2013 net parking, that's a typo, should be 2015, $110. The monthly parking rate is what it was, so that that's applicable to all stalls. That's $32 for monthly expense, which I believe is on the low side. It should likely be more like 45%. So net parking per stall was $77.83. So we applied 325 stalls times 78 net, which is 304,000 net, and he actually received 208,000, so he received less than that, mainly because some stalls were owner occupied. Then we applied 7.5 cap rate to get a value of 4,056. And the assessor only had 7.5 cap rate also. So we were disputing the rent only. So the last page that we show the full income approach. The value for the building, we're asking 17,058, which is the same as what the assessor had. So we were disputing the parkade only, and the board went with the value, 4,056 for the parkade, and 21 million total, which was based on 304 net rent. That was calculated for the parkade. So we asked that the board apply the board revision decision on the parkade. Now, the decision shows that the person from Altus that did appeal is Doug Vector, which was not me. It's my client, and I did the appeal when he bought back in the 90s. I've done the appeals many times, but the last 3 or possibly 4 cycles, Doug Becker is the one that did the appeal each and every time. So therefore, I don't have the details. I don't know exactly what Doug has said verbally to the board. For whatever he said, the board agreed with him. I believe at the time when I did the appeals, way back, the 325 stalls, there were a lot of outside tenants, and that the rate they were charging was the same as the outside tenants. So I believe the rents that we have, they're $110. Doug would know more about that, and he's not around now, he's off, and therefore I cannot question him. So I just ask that the board use its own decision on this to apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Paul?
Yeah, there was no INE submitted in 2015. On your page 6, how do you get 208,800 for your gross parking income if there's no income reported?
Well, we're not using that 208. We end up with a net of 304.
Okay, but what I'm asking, shouldn't there just be no number for 2015? Like, are you using the INE to get the 208,800? Or where's this number coming from?
Oh, I see, that would be, Doug would like to have gotten financial statements and or some kind of source documents from Mawanisa.
So this is the gross parking for the parkade?
That's what it's actually getting, and the expenses shown on the financials was 9684 for.
And the 214, which would have been the following year, or the previous year, I should say, 220 would be the same situation.
Right.
Okay, because when I work at 208,800, the stall rate for 325 stalls per month works out to be $53.53 a square foot gross.
Right.
And it's actually, that's what the number is saying.
Right, and the paragraph above there says, since the property is partially owner occupied and some stalls do not receive an income, the actual gross income and expenses are followed, so that the. So Alta stated that there is some stalls that are not paying rent.
Okay. Did you investigate with the property owner, specifically Greg Starr, who is the person responsible for asking for the extension and the INEs? That's a contact person. Did you ask about what they're actually grossing at? Did you investigate?
I didn't question when you saw it all. We had a decision of the board, and I was proceeding with that.
Okay. I don't see any market comparables for other parkades. Do you have any market comparables to judge whether this parkade is performing at market or in relationship to market? The
parkade downtown would vary quite a bit. Near Portage and Graham would be quite high, and near Convention Center would be higher. And Broadway, Osceola Broadway would be much lower. This is Broadway in Maine, and away from everything, so I believe that it's its own market.
Okay.
If they're asking for $110 per stall for stalls other than their own, I believe that's the market rate, and that's what.
So we're looking at 2014, 2015, you were stated that you're getting, not you personally, but Mr. Becker must have got financial statements from Wawanesa indicating that they're getting roughly $53 a stall
With an adjustment for stalls that are non-income generating based on, I guess, owner occupied, while Wendy's occupied space stalls. So
We
it's
did
gonna,
not rely on 208,000 whatsoever. We only relied on $110 per month per stall gross that they receive.
correct, but I'm trying to determine how you go from whether it be 53 and how many stalls are actually not income generating to get to 110.31. And I don't see any relationship here to show that. It's just a number on a page.
If they charge $110 to Assiniboine Credit Union, if they charge $110 to outsiders, that's the market rent, and we apply that to all the stalls, including those that are no rent for those that Wawanesa occupies.
But that's getting back to my original line of questioning, and I'll touch it in my evidence. Did you speak with Mr. Greg Starr? Because I did, and he indicated that no Wawanesa employee or no Assiniboine Credit Union employee gets any break. They all roughly pay about $90 a stall, which is below the 110. And he indicated that the only stalls in there that don't receive any actual parking income are for the Ivory Restaurant. So your work up here is quite different from what the person who's our contact person to contact stated.
Wawanesa may
Which
charge
pushes it a level below any underground parkade anywhere downtown.
Wawanesa may charge $90 for their own employees, but they charge $110 to outsiders. That's the rate we use. We did not use the $90. If there is in fact a $90 rate in there, we did not use it. We use higher.
But my point is, he's indicating that there's no differential separation between employee or tenant of the building, whether it be Wawanesa or Assiniboine. And he's indicating the average rent that all the parkers pay is $90 gross. The numbers just don't seem to work out any way you look at it.
I can't comment on the conversation you have with somebody, and you have nothing.
But you didn't investigate with Mr. Starr.
I didn't know what your position would be here,
Okay.
and therefore I cannot investigate.
Okay. But when you don't see an I&E, when you don't have any financial statement reported from the I&E, which is typically what Altus works from, what we work from, all I see here is these two lines at 220 and 208, which was indicated earlier by yourself as that must be a financial statement gotten from Mr. Becker for this property, which again, doesn't work out. I mean, I just can't come back to the math where it would actually come back to what I'm seeing here. So it seems to be all over the place.
208,000 includes rent of $0 for Wawanesa, and we did not rely upon that.
But how many stalls are actually generating income and how many stalls are not?
I think he's answered that though.
I,
So if we can move on from this.
Well, I don't see anywhere here where it says X amount are non-generating and X amount are income generating.
All we need to say is that we don't rely on that 208,000 because it does not include the market rent for all the stalls. The
Which is-
market rent that we use is $110, which they
Okay.
charge
Market
other
rent.
people.
We don't have any market rent, you're just stating that, market rent for, let me rephrase this so I'm clear on it. People who are parkers who are non-Wawanesa and parkers who are non-Assiniboine parkers are just general parkers parking in the parkade. You're saying that they get $110 per stall.
That's what Doug Becker gave as evidence, and I did not
And-
investigate it further.
Any
He's saying
further?
the market rent was
Okay.
$110
Okay.
per stall. That's what he used, and that's what the board used.
Okay, all right. And again, that's just what the actual site parkade is. You don't have any market comparables for other parkades in downtown.
And I would say that they're not comparable. This is a unique location. It has a lot of stalls, 325 stalls.
Two blocks off of Portage and Main.
It's a long walk. People, it's not 2 blocks.
2 blocks.
Portage and Main to Broadway, it's a long walk. It has its own location within the downtown. They're charging $110, and that's the market, what they're charging. The same as the apartment block. We have certain rent of a subject property. We don't use market rents of other apartments. We use the actual rent that a particular property is generating. In this case, this property is generating $110.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
And I would say
Thank you.
that Portage and Main parkades would be a lot more than that. It's a different location.
290 to 340, depending on what type of,
I would agree that they're much higher, so that its location is, for the subject, is what is required that we look at.
Okay, any questions, Simon?
No questions.
I have no questions. If you'd like to proceed.
Sure. We have an annual rental value of $538,200. I'm recommending that be maintained. That's based on 325 stalls. As indicated earlier, there's been no IMU submitted to the property. This is based on our straight model workup for downtown parkades. If you look at page A1, this is the realty brief that was submitted. On page A3 is the $138, which is per stall, net per month. And on page A4 are the 4 closest heated parkade stabilized NOIs. So they range from 160, 164, 118, 97, which would be the lowest one we can find at 180 King Street, which is a small parkade, and 129 per month. Those are direct comparables. If you look at yeah, so if you get back to how the board ruled, that would be on my B1. It's right after A17. The board ruled for the realty that they accepted the rental rate of $70 net per stall. I still can't come back to this value. There's no market comparables for this value to apply. There are no actual statements from the property owner indicating what they're getting. I investigated with Greg Starr, who indicated differently from what the appellant indicated today, that they're getting approximately $90 per stall gross for all parties who park in the stall, and that there's no breaks for employees or non-employees of Wawanesa, which is the property owner. The only difference, he said, was a small amount of parking, and he couldn't tell me how much was for the tenants, or I should say the restaurant tenant, which would have a small amount of space for their restaurateurs to come in. So, based on the lack of INEs and the lack of reporting information and the conflicting reporting information, I'm disregarding anything here, because the rental information that we do have is inconsistent and it doesn't reflect actual market, and that's what we're here to determine. We're not here to determine what a contractual rent would be. We can't even make that out here. We're here to determine what the average market rent would be. Fee simple, what would a tenant be, a parker come into the property as of April 1st, 2016, and what would they be paying? We have a model rate of $138 a square foot, or $130 a stall. That's based on comparables that you've seen on my page A4. I think that's the best market evidence. The owner didn't provide any financial statements whatsoever that can be used. We don't have the person sitting in front of us who actually did a limited investigation from Maltus to report the numbers that we see. It'd be unfair to ask Mr. DuPont to go any further than that, as he didn't do the investigation for that. I don't see how we can maintain what the board ordered as far as the whole realty order at $78 a stall. Just can't get back to it. So my recommendation is to maintain $138 a stall rental rate, which works back to $538,200 for an annual ARV, and that's what I think the board should place on the property.
Thank you. Do you have questions of the assessor?
Page A4, comparables, that's comparables that was given to the board of revision, right? And the board did not go with those?
I do not believe so, no. As
The,
I pointed out.
The expense ratio shown in the middle of those is 45%, 48, 47, 45, et cetera. So would you agree that normally the assessor accepts a 45% expense ratio?
Roughly, yeah.
So if we have 138 net, and if divided by 55%, you would need $250 gross. Would you agree with that, with the math, that if you start with 250 with a 45% expense ratio, you end up with the 138?
Approximately, yeah.
So would you agree that the reported rates, third last column, that is virtually none at 250?
Pardon me?
There's not many at $250. It's quite rare.
$299 for it, which is 2 blocks down the street. As you can see, the rental rate. 220.
So I see two
223
comparables at
James.
250 or more.
And 180 King, 180, which is almost past City Hall into a much different bracket from Main and Broadway.
But my question was that, is there any comparables at 250? 180 King is 180.
Yeah, I'm pointing out there are comparables. You just, I don't know what you're looking at. You're looking at 280 to 345. You're looking at 220 at James. This is what the market is. Whether the expense ratio is at 40 or whether it's at 50, this is roughly what the market we've indicated. This is what our model parameter is. I don't think there's any evidence to back off from that, especially when we're having conflicting rates as we've seen today. There's just, it's an insolvent argument that I can see. There's just no, it's all over the place with no actual backing evidence to support anything. So,
330 Smith, what's the location of that?
sorry?
330 Smith, where would that be?
I'll be on Smith Street, 2 blocks off of Portage.
So would you say that's a better location than the subject?
This is 2 blocks off of Main Street in Portage.
Smith is closer to the central shed area, the entertainment district.
Yeah.
The convention center, et cetera.
Yeah.
Would you agree that the subject is outside the shed area?
It is outside the shed area, yes it is.
No, 447 Portage, that's the investors building,
Correct.
and they're $195, so that and you show only 38% expenses ratio, but that does not support a rent of $250 that basically apply for the subject.
Well, a lot of the parkers in there are employee parking though. You're aware that there's an employee parking in, a significant amount of employee parking in that parkade, which would drive the rent down from market.
I would assume when you report 195, it's not,
That's why there's,
it's not the employees.
that's why there's an
rent.
asterisk there, so.
That would be the 195 is what they charge to outsiders. Otherwise, you would not even report it. If you're mixed zero rents with good rents, that's useless.
These are the numbers.
So it's your contention then there should be a gross rent at 250 and apply to 45% expense ratio to get to 138.
Correct.
All questions?
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
No questions.
Right. I have no questions on this. I'm assuming we don't need a summation on this.
No, no.
I'm fine.
Okay, so 268 Fort Street.
268 Fourth Street, business roll number 28200. I'm making to maintain the assessment based on the Board of Revision order. If you look at the following page, page 2, the decision to reduce the property, and it was a small reduction in the realty property, but that was based on an adjustment to the capitalization rate, and the decision to maintain the assessor's net operating income and the corresponding rental rate. So we're dealing with an annual ARV with the rental rate that was confirmed by the panel. If you look at page 3, is a summary of the realty appeal. And on page 4, the last page, is the rental rate at $11.99 a square foot. The NOI was maintained. Comparables are as such. The lease in place is $10.60. They chose, the panel chose to go with the market comparables. The lease in place started in 2012, roughly 3.5 years off of the reference date. And the board ordered $11.99 to be used, and that's the rental rate that we're using for the ARV. So based on the confirmation of the rental rate in place, I think that the corresponding $99,180 for an ARV is acceptable, and it should be maintained.
Thank you. Do you have a brief? Are you gonna?
Questions? No questions.
You have no questions?
My brief is that Altus was asking for $10 rent. The board gave 12. We appealed to the municipal board. We're not gonna rehash our $10 rent. We're just gonna ask the board for confirmation. 54, one, I believe is what we're asking for.
Okay, so no brief?
No brief.
Okay, thank you. And we will move on to 225 Broadway.
225 Broadway, my recommendation is to maintain the 2018 assessment. There's 51 stalls, outdoor surface parking stalls. We have a monthly net rent of $103 a stall. Sorry, $103.50. The annual ARV, corresponding annual ARV is $63,360. My comparables are on page 2. They're all surface parking stalls, or surface parking lots with stalls, obviously. That's roughly what they're going for. They're all in and around the subject property. If you look at page 3, the owner of the property is Cambrian Credit Union Limited. They are not reporting any parking income. They are fully owner occupied, obviously. Following pages in the INEs, there is no rental information for parking. Page 7 is the photographs of the property. Just to walk you through the very top page, the very top picture on the page, there's the building. If you look off the left-hand side, there is a fence line. This is on the right-hand side of that, there is a separate lot with approximately 30 stalls, I believe, 32 stalls. That's run by InPark. As you can see, that's the bottom picture. There's an InPark sign. Those stalls are not under appeal today. The 51 stalls comes from the segment of the property on the left-hand side of that fence line, which is the 51 stalls. The two pictures of the property below are of that lot. Again, also run by InPark. Right now, I did not ask for non-compliance on this property. As I reviewed the property further, there wasn't enough time to investigate it further. If you look at the property, there is no indication of whether InPark is an actual tenant with a lease in place renting the land, and their corresponding business takes all the profit
to themselves, or whether or not there's a parking agreement, a licensee agreement, however you want to call it, where they have, where they take a portion of the income generated, and then there's a determined amount that goes back to the property owner. Either way, we don't have any rental information being reported by the owner for parking. Because we cannot confirm at this point in time whether in-park is a tenant or are they an agent of the owner. I'm not gonna be asking for a non-compliance, but I'm not gonna go with, there's no rental information whatsoever other than the market that I'm bringing in, so there's no way to do a site-specific analysis on this property. So that's the reason why we're not asking for non-compliance. I'll have to look into this further, and if it's appropriate, we'll determine what we're gonna do moving forward once we get some more time to look at it, see if we'll file an appeal on it. But the market indicates that they can roughly get around $103 a stall outside surface parking. So our annual rental value at $63,360 is very achievable, which is kind of where I was getting back to the parkade earlier, where you're getting surface parking lots, getting grossing higher than what the underground parkade was getting. So that's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. McCont?
It's your first page, so the rent is $103.50, which is the net, and you would agree that an expense ratio of 45% would be applicable.
Roughly.
So the 103 divided by 55% is 188, so you would agree that your comparables would have to be about 188.
And they are on page 2.
Page 2.
170, 160, 175, 170, 160, 185, 185, 155, 180, 190, and 165. These are all surface parking lots, 11 of them.
Right, so 188, so how many of the comparables are higher than 188?
This is, you see it.
There's only one, is that correct?
1, 2, 3. You're arguing $5 off of what?
I don't know, but I mean,
Whether it's 40%, 42% expense, there's some lots that are reported at roughly around 50% sometimes. It depends, Maybe it didn't snow so much one year, maybe it snowed a lot one year.
so your first comparable, $170 times 55% would be $93.50. And your next comparable, 160 times 55% would be 88. Would you agree those two comparables do not support your position at $103?
Mr. Dupont, the comparables are what you see. If you want to go through the math and disagree with them, you can.
Would you agree that the properties on Fort are superior properties? Do you know where they are on Fort?
No, I don't believe this is a superior property. They're just average surface they're all what they are. This is a good location, it's right on Broadway, there's easy access to it. It's a well-utility site, if you look at the utility of the site. Given that it's a large parcel, it's got a good approach. You've got easy parking in and out. It's not a regular type parcel where it'd be difficult for some areas to be utilized. It's got good site utilization. It's a good downtown surface grade parking.
Your comparables 3 and 4, 444 St. Mary's and 310 York, would you not say that's very close to the convention center?
Yeah.
So they would be superior locations?
I never said that. I said they're all very close. They're all within a few blocks of one another.
All questions?
Thank you. Questions? Sally?
No.
Questions? I have no questions. If you'd like to go ahead and kind of groups.
Yeah.
Only one more. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. I went fast. Usually my hearings go very low. Thank you.
proceed, Mr. Dupont, I do have one quick question
Sure,
for
sure.
you. What's the cross street on this property?
Did I not have them in there? It would be Fort and, well, Broadway up front, but Fort and, Fort,
And Gary, the other
Gary,
side.
yeah.
I don't have the map in my submission.
Yeah, sorry.
Please proceed.
Okay, so the first page, you say that realty, include 225 Broadway includes the building, and there was no 2018 appeal in the property. And this is for the 51 stalls, as Jeremy indicated, the property includes another 29 stalls to the east, which is not under appeal here today. I'm not sure whether it has its own roll number or not. So this Cambrian Credit Union, and they gave this 51 stalls to Impart to operate. So the rent, the assessor has 103.50. If you have a 45% expense ratio, the gross rent would have to be 188. I have evidence following the 280 Broadway. It's assessed at $91, so the assessor has a net rent of 91. Broadway and Donald, the assessor made a recommendation to reduce it to 91. So therefore, we're asking for $91 also.
Sorry, what page are you on?
The first page. Towards the bottom. I'm reading from the bottom.
I don't know, sorry, I'll wait here. I apologize for interrupting you. Okay, keep going.
So my request is that we use $91 net rent per stall, which would make the assessment $55,692, which is about $8,000 less. The reason we appeal is that the increase is too high. I didn't bring what the previous assessment is, but that was the main reason it was appealed. The 2A shows the assessment notice, so it's assessed in the name of Impart, Imperial Parking. And it says 51 stalls on the assessment notice. 2B is the Impart's data on this property, and it shows no monthly rents. You show that you can rent it for hourly or daily, or weekends, they don't have a daily rate. Otherwise, you could probably rely on that, but there's none shown. Page 3 is the realty. That was not appealed, so they had 98,000 installs. Our report for 2016 indicated 29 stalls to the east, which is not assessed, and 50 stalls to the west. The assessor has 51 stalls for the subject in the BA. So therefore, 29 plus 51 would be 80 stalls. So the west would be 63.8% of this 98,000, which would be 62,599, which is pretty much what the assessment for BA is. So the BA matches their realty, which was not appealed. Now page 4 is the map, the aerial photo, and it shows the 29 stalls and the 51. So the 51 is what Imperial Parking manages, and 29 I believe would be likely used by Cambrian Credit Union themselves. Page 5 is the start of our 2016 report, an old report, mainly because we had the stall count. When I looked at this, there was no appeal for 2018, so I didn't have enough data to determine the parking. And then the page 7 is the property on 280 Broadway, which we had, and the parking stalls on page 8 of that report indicates that they were assessing it at $91 net per stall. So that's one of my comparables that I'm using. Page 9, it shows the parking that had there, Smith and Broadway, and that's a major government tenant, and then that's the parkade they have there. And at Donald and Broadway, the little lot is the next comparable. So page 10, we have the assessment, a recommendation by Lindsay Wareham, the main assessor for parking lots. And she had a recommendation to reduce from 737 to 524. She shows a map on page 11. It shows it in red, the Broadway and Donald, besides 280 Broadway. And then page 12, the assessor recommended $91 per stall. And that, the rest at the bottom was for comparables. So you have to take the gross rents. You stabilize to some are very low expense ratio, so that we have to question the low expense ratios. Some they may not have all the expenses in there. So page 13 is the assessor's recommendation again, 26,000 is the rent. Page 14 is the actual rent roll they have for 280 Broadway. They were showing rents of 160, and at 55% would be $88 net. So that you subtract 45% for expenses, but the net is 55% of that, so that's comparable at $88, and we're using 91. Page 20, that was part of the assessor's report. They had the in-park data on that property, Donald and Broadway. Towards the bottom or the middle of the page, it says random parking 175. So 175 times 55% would be 96. So the random parking is 96, and the actual parking for some of their tenants are 88. So if you take both together, it supports the 91. So that's what we're asking for. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Paul?
Yeah, can you turn to your page 2B? This is the subject property, 225 Broadway. We're not assessing for hourly, daily, or evening, weekend event parking. My understanding, given that proximity, that there is a draw for that after not between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., which would be the monthly parking, but the after-hours parking, event parking on the weekend after 6 p.m. There is actual charges for that, so there is a draw for this lot for that.
I don't know what you mean, there's a draw.
Well, look at hourly, daily, evening, weekend. You're getting evening and weekend, 6 a.m. or $6 evening max until 6 a.m. So what that's indicating is that you can park there until 6 a.m. and then the monthly parking it's all the same way downtown. It's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. parking. But on this page, I don't see what the actual monthly parking is. So you have the subject properties, casual parking, event parking, weekend parking, but you don't have the monthly parking on it.
That's what I said in my evidence. If they had monthly parking, we could use that to determine the assessment, but they don't. So
Well,
either they don't rent it monthly, or they just don't show it.
that's my point. Evening, weekend parking, $6 evening max until 6 a.m. You wouldn't have that in there if you didn't have monthly parkers coming in from Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Right, so there's likely monthly parking, but we don't know what the rate is.
Okay, so we don't know what the rate is, but we do know that there is still enough draw on this site to have auxiliary income coming in, which we don't have an assessment for. Right? So, right? Okay.
We're
so-
going with the monthly value.
But there is still a draw. It's in a good location. You're still having auxiliary income coming in aside from the monthly parking, which we're unaware of what it is.
Just because they're asking doesn't mean they're filling up. That doesn't indicate the monthly rental. And I believe that the assessment department does not work in the casual, you work in a monthly.
I'm just pointing out the
monthly parking rate.
desirability of the draw of the plot. So, so there is no, I noticed there is no income and expense questionnaire in your brief.
No.
So we don't have a way of finding what the actual subject property's monthly rent is.
No, there's nothing in the file that I saw that would indicate the monthly parking rate.
I would have to agree with that. If we go through, just getting back to page 7, I guess it starts at, you're indicating Broadway South, that they are comparable locations, or that we should be using our model rate that we have here for the subject property? Is that your argument?
I'm showing two comparables where you use $91. One is you used $91 originally, and the other one you made a recommendation to reduce to 91. There are two properties on Broadway.
These are two properties off of Broadway, two smaller properties off of Broadway.
No, the one that's at the corner of Donald and Broadway, the one.
Yeah, but again, that's a poor site location based on the utility of the site. You can't get that many, actual parkers on that site if you look at it, like, right?
No, I believe if you got the 2 cars wide and the lane between, that's a relatively efficient lot. I mean, at the bottom, page 11, it shows that 2 cars on each side, so that there's a lot of room in the middle. So that type of site is a efficient site, because you need a lane for 2 lanes of parking, two parking areas on each side, so that's a normal.
Okay. So, and then again, I guess on the last page there, page 20, or I'm not sure, this seems to be all pieced together from other briefs. Your last page.
That was in the same brief that the assessor had. If you look at the numbering, 16, 1, et cetera, it's the same type of numbering.
The last page of your brief, we have a Donald and Broadway lot that's getting 175, and you're claiming 9625, correct? For net?
That was in the brief of Lindsay Wareham that started on page 10. If I copied that page from her brief. So the random parking, which they rent to outsiders, works to 96, and the actual parking they rent to monthly renters are 88. If you have a lot like that, you have the monthly parkers and you have the random parkers, or the outside parkers. So that you would have to take a blend of the two to get an average monthly rent for a parking lot.
You indicated, I believe you said that some of the expenses were out a little bit and you had to, they were a bit suspect, you had to look at it, correct?
I had to look at what?
You said some of your expenses were out a little bit, you had a question in them. Is not a comment you made when you were reviewing these?
Oh, I'm saying that when they show only 22% expenses, there's probably some expenses missing. Because parking lots are usually around 45, so the assessor uses 45% as a standard.
So you have to have a bit of a subjective eye when you're looking at the expenses versus the income when it's actually generating to come to a net.
Right, on the marketplace, you can find the gross rents, and then therefore the standards to use 45% expense ratio.
So when property owners don't report any income, how can you actually use any judgment whatsoever to come to what that site-specific, whether it be 200 Main or this property, or we're gonna get to 191 Broadway? How can you actually review the information and then come to, this is what it should be versus market? When you're doing,
On this property, I have 2 comparables from the assessment department themselves, used $91 on 280 Broadway, and then they made a recommendation to reduce Broadway and Donald down to $91. And part of that is that they had their own comparables that are shown, which are gross rents.
and that's my point, we're coming down to $91 you're accepting up here, or down from under, but over in an underground parkade at $78, you're thinking that's more appropriate? Like, the market evaluation today seems to be all over the place, where we have an underground parkade not reporting, and that's a good market rent or net rent at $78 or so, versus here, surface parking at a much higher rate. So I'm kinda.
You're questioning me about a previous hearing, which is appropriate.
Well, I think it is appropriate, this is what the market is, and all of a sudden, above ground parkades are now, or above ground parking, surface parking is now a higher draw than an underground parkade. So
Actually, sorry gentlemen, sorry to interrupt, but we're just gonna take a break right here. We have a panel member who needs to plug a meter.
Oh,
So, sorry if you could just. Sorry, just take a 10-minute. wanting to ask, if you wanted to.
No, I think we're good. That's all the questions I have.
I believe your last point was you were comparing the previous
Yeah.
property, but, yeah.
Last one, I think.
Actually, we aren't finished.
Oh,
yet.
sorry.
Sandy, did you have any questions?
I
on
don't
this?
have any questions, thank you.
Right?
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
The evidence that you showed, or what you call your comparables, so not really comparables, are the city assessments, by the property.
Not quite. The city used $91 for both,
Yeah.
but part of the city's evidence, they had the actual rent roll for the property at Broadway and Donald, $160. So that was part of the evidence. 55% of that would have been 88. And then the random parking for in-park for that lot was 175. So those are market comparables, 175 and then 160. And then if you apply 55%, it's $96 for random and 88 for monthly parkers. And that the assessor used 91 based on that information that she presented to the board. So that it's based on actual market comparable.
That's all my questions.
And I have no questions.
Can I just get a small summary statement since we had a break?
Absolutely.
There's no rental information we have for the subject property. On the actual Impart's website, they're reporting casual weekend parking, evening parking. They're actually missing the monthly parking rate. There's nothing that I see that would differentiate or segregate this property to be in a lesser lot on an off-Broadway or an off-major route to get a slight reduction in desirability, which would equate to a lower rental value for a parking stall. I don't see any need to reduce this property.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Duval, did you wish to say?
Yes, so the assessors rent 103.50 divided by 55%. You need a gross rent of 188. The assessors comparables, 11 comparables, only one is higher than that. So therefore, the assessors' own comparables would indicate a reduction from their own rents. Then I have two properties on Broadway, it's near the subject. And it says off Broadway, with 280 Broadway, it just has the parking in the back of 280 Broadway. So it's not, I don't think you can say it's off Broadway. So it is two properties on Broadway, and there is two comparable, well, actually, it's one comparable, the Broadway and Donald, at $88 rent for the actual tenants, monthly parkers, and $96 for random parkers. So I believe that would support the reduction to $91, similar to the assessments of these two other lots. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to, Broadway?
Yeah, this is, civic address would be 191 Broadway. It's not on this parking lot, but that would be the parent building, Wawanesa building. The business assessment roll number is 18021. It's non-compliant for the same reasons for 200 Main Street, exactly the same reasons. So I'm requesting that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation for Section 53(3)B of the Municipal Assessment Act, and for reduction is ordered that it follow Section 54(3.2). I can kind of guide you through it. If you just flip to my page 29, I'll just let you guys catch up. This is the inquiry, 311 inquiry that the appellant, the property owner took out for this roll number, the realty roll number, asking for an extension. You go to page 28, I'm kind of going in reverse order, but that's what it did. Page 27 shows that it was granted, the extension was granted. And then if you read through up to page 24, that they were inquiring about what the penalties if they missed the deadline. And the deadline was June 30th, 2016, in which they missed. We sent certified mail, the original mail all went to the right person. Obviously, they inquired and got the extension granted, so there is no failure for it to go to the right mailing address. It's just that they requested an extension and they didn't respond to it. So based on that, they are non-compliant. They failed to report, and the appropriate sections of the act have been asked for.
Sorry, Mr. Paul, I'd just like to point out in your brief on page 6 and 7, and I think also 14 and 15, you've got the private user ID.
I have it blacked out, do I not?
Not on this one, not on my copy.
I apologize.
Okay.
If the board can the board just black out their copy?
What's that for action?
I apologize, I had it blacked out.
6 and 7 and 14 and 15, at least on my copy.
Are any of your guys' copies blocked out?
No, they don't block
Oops. I have it blacked out, I see. I must have made a photocopy error, I apologize. But as long as, you guys can see it, but as long as the matter of public record is redacted. I don't know how that would be.
I'm sorry,
No, it's okay.
You're finished
Thank you
with
for
your
catching it.
presentation?
Yeah, so, I'm done with my presentation,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Same rationale as 200 Main.
Great. Questions?
No questions.
Okay. Questions? Questions?
No questions.
I have no questions. Did you wish to present anything?
My submission is that the non-compliance penalty should not be applicable to BA, similar to what I argued before.
Okay.
And I'm requesting confirmation, so I don't know if it's relevant that we argue non-compliance. It's just we're asking the board to keep the assessment unchanged.
Okay, thank you. If you could step out for a moment, gentlemen.
Yeah, up open non-compliance.
So you're asking for it to be confirmed?
Yes, I'm asking for confirmation.
I think that's it for the day.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. 10 minutes past 3, it's not bad.
Thank you.
Oh. Shut off first.